Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh reportedly telling General Naravane on his repeated request for clear orders in the face of perhaps 4 advancing Chinese tanks along the Richinla track post the QPQ, Jo uchit samjho wo karo.
So the point that I really wish to make that in these kind of conversations between, say, the political authority and the generalship, these are not conversations between schoolboys. They are elevated conversations between sharp minds.
The final authority to actually open fire rests with the person who's on the ground. And please give credit to the soldiers, the tank men, the troop leaders, the company commanders, squadron leaders, who were their squadron commanders, who actually saw, they knew what was going to happen, and they held on to fire.
There's also a tale of two systems, the Chinese system and the Indian system. Ours is a democracy. You see the kind of debates you will never see in parliament. General Zhao Ziyang, the Western Theatre commander, who was the Western Theatre commander in 2020, I'm sure we don't know what went through his mind and whether he made any calls to anyone. It's a completely closed system.
How can you control in today's social media driven world? In what we are discussing today, if this requires to be ratified by the government of India in terms of censoring it or checking it, this debates will never ever take place.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Chakravyuh. Caught in the political and strategic Chakravyuh is the unpublished book of former Chief of Army Staff General Manoj Mukund Naravane, 4 Stars of Destiny. Quoting certain passages from the unpublished memoir, leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi in particular, opposition leaders and some analysts in general have accused the Narendra Modi government of abdicating responsibility at the height of the India-China standoff post-Galwan. But was that actually the case, with India having swiftly deployed about 50,000 troops, tanks, armored personal carriers, artillery, guns and howitzers along the India-Tibet line of actual control, and of course also mounting a QPQ or a quid pro quo operation at one time dominating the Chinese Moldo garrison? Did anything in the deployment or India's actions indicate that India was either in panic or indecisive? Let's decode this political rhetoric around a very crucial national security issue. Joining me on this India Today special broadcast is Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, former Army Commander, a published author; Lieutenant General D.P. Pandey, former Kashmir Corps Commander and a published author; Sandeep Unnithan is Senior Journalist and an author. I'm emphasizing all 4 on this panel have published books and on matters military. General Shukla, this most hotly debated issue right now, General, is Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh reportedly telling General Naravane on his repeated request for clear orders in the face of perhaps 4 advancing Chinese tanks along the Richinla track post the QPQ, Jo uchit samjho wo karo. In your appreciation, sir, would you see this as abdication of responsibility as is being alleged politically?
See, certainly not. And let's go back in history, 1 or 2 incidents, and then put this आप वो करें जो उचित समझें in context. So I recall Operational Parakram, General Padmanabhan, when he was asked to mobilize, the orders that he got from Prime Minister Vajpayee were कि आप चलिए हम बताएंगे. Now that is the way politicians speak. The art of generalship is to infer from the political direction what, shall we say, operational design you would like to enforce. And General Padmanabhan took those words and created it into that whole military coercion that was Operation Parakram. Let's go back even further, 1971. Now this is military to military. The Eastern Army Commander, Jagjit Singh Arora, tells Sagat Singh, Sagat, if you reach the Meghna, you will not cross it. And I'm quoting from the biography of General Sagat by his ADC, later GOC 25 Division, General Randhir Singh. He said, the moment Sagat came out, he said, if I reach the Meghna, Randhir, I'll cross it. Now, this is interesting. The night he reaches the Meghna, and Sagat reaches it first. Sagat was always the first. General Arora rings him up and says, Sagat, you recall, I told you not to cross the Meghna. Now Sagat changes his tone. And Sagat says, sir, I'm a co-commander. I see opportunity beyond, and Dhaka across. I'm crossing at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. Now, if he crossed and he succeeded,
Okay.
if he crossed and if he had failed, perhaps he would be being court-martialed. So the point that I really wish to make that in these kind of conversations between, say, the political authority and the generalship, these are not conversations between schoolboys. They are elevated conversations between sharp minds. You push envelopes. There is creativity, imagination. You also take risks. Now, in this context, it is also, I think, a cultural issue. I am from Uttar Pradesh. If you tell me, आप वो करें जो आप उचित समझें, I will say this is a politician telling me that I have complete faith in you. I respect your professional wisdom. Frankly, I don't know what advice I can give you in these kind of situations. You do what you deem fit.
Do what you deem fit.
See, I think Galwan happens in June, and this incident of Kailash is in August. Now, between Galwan and Kailash, I'm sure contingency plans would have been worked out. And you don't have to wait
I'll come to each and every aspect on this. General Pandey, the armies were deployed since the face-off at Pengongso and other points. Galwan, we lost 20 soldiers, and General Pandey, I believe, Russian agency TASS quoted sources saying that China lost more than 40 or 45, though China conceded losing just 4, including their commanding officer. Would anything suggest, from the point that India had deployed to the time that 4 tanks were seen rising, going up on Richenla, that there was panic, that India was panicking, or is that the perception of the opposition, General Pandey?
No. Firstly, let me just assure you of one thing, that there is never a panic in our Indian context, because we have seen enough firefights, maybe on the borders, ceasefires which have happened, opening of guns and very heavy weapons and artillery, to exchanges of duels which are quite extensive, hitting out at each other, and face-offs of variety of nature, which have, most of which, by the way, doesn't come out into the media, because there is a certain degree of dignity in what happens, and military matters are best left at where it should be. But coming on to seeing 4 tanks rising up onto the range, if anybody feels that Indian Army is going to become perturbed about it, I think it will be quite incorrect. Please understand, the implications of such a maneuver, when we were already there, have got today's application of elements of power, any major move which takes place, which have got certain issues, ramifications in the diplomatic environment, in the international environment, which may have economic challenges eventually, the possibility of opening of fire, which may result into maybe higher level of escalation. It is imperative that information moves back and forth up the channel of command and through the various communication channels. It is not only to inform your higher headquarters or higher ups, it is also to enable them, in case there are other opportunities, to ensure that this escalation can be stopped well in time. That thing can take. I just want to give an example, or I can just speculate that when you are informing upwards, it also means that some levers will go calling up to the counterpart onto the other side, that certain kind of a maneuver which is aggressive, which is taking place. You mean business, you want to stop it. Is it under your control? Is it under your orders? Okay. Are you aware of it? Because large number of times actions are taken at the sub-tactical, tactical level, for which approvals and clearances are also not at the topmost level. So when this dialogue happens, there is very many times that the agencies which are involved are either stopped or turned away. Okay. Right? So that is one part. We are just coming here to talk about the book. I only want to ask you a counter question, Gaurav. I know it goes off the script.
Sure.
That today 2 generals of army are standing here. Should we have taken concurrence and from the script what you're going to be speaking here? Should we be censored? Right? The bottom line is today we should get away from that whole idea of talking about certain issues which have already happened in the past and
Okay.
not get too worried about it.
But then, why are we discussing it as journalists, Sandeep, is because there's raging politics on the subject. It's being raised in our parliament. And perhaps, it's not for me to say whether General Naravane should have written this or not at a time when the standoff still continues. But Sandeep, you and I were both reporting from Ladakh that time. In fact, I had traveled all the way to DBO during the standoff when some had claimed that DSDBO road had been interdicted. BRO, if I remember correctly, then under General Harpal Singh, was doing a great job. During the standoff, they were building faster, better, so that more resources could be sent up wherever they would be required. Anything that you saw on ground suggested that there was panic in the month of either July or August?
Well, far from it, Gaurav. I didn't see panic on our side. Far from it, I saw resolve actually. And we were there. I remember in September 2020 when we went to cover this build-up.
Yes.
And I think the most heartening sight, to my mind, as a military historian, was the fact the Indian Air Force was there in the theatre. There were fighter jets after fighter jets landing in Ladakh. Leh Airfield. I remember standing there at the edge of Leh Airfield and, seeing those. It was like an air bridge from Chandigarh to Leh. And I said, this is not going to be 1962 again. Yeah. In 62, we tied the hands of the Indian military. We kept the Air Force out of the theatre of conflict. We did not deploy offensive air power. In 2020, I was very sure that if the balloon went up, the Indian Air Force would launch against the Chinese. And that, to my mind, was the biggest sign of confidence I saw. And I think the political leadership understood, which is why they immediately deployed the Indian Air Force there. And of course, gave the military leadership on the ground the complete freedom to do exactly as they thought as military commanders.
General Shukla, that's a very interesting point because Sandeep and I would watch every day, not just transport aircraft, be the air bridge between Chandigarh and Leh, but fighter jets landing and taking off from the Leh airfield, and also exercises that were conducted ex-Ambala and X number of places in the north. And we were told Air Force had an edge vis-a-vis China in Tibet, Chinese Air Force in Tibet. And China has been carrying out salami slicing of Indian territory for decades. If 50,000 troops had been deployed, if tanks, APCs, RT had been deployed, we reported Operation Snow Leopard, we reported the QPQ operations, the Chinese were advancing with clubs and barbed wires post the QPQ. And I had reported that the Indian Army had opened fire in the air, which they usually do not do. They fire for effect, they fire to kill. But this time they opened fire so that the Chinese would not advance any further. Would this indicate either panic or abdication at tactical level or at a strategic level?
No, see, there is no cause for panic at all. As I think DP was saying, the Indian military of today is very different from the Indian military of 62. So I think in terms of force postures, reserves, mech elements, air, logistics, we are on a very strong footing. But see the issue, now some of the issues that General Naravane raises are also right. So let me just comment on them. I personally feel that the China study group, its role must terminate when conflicts begin. And then the military chain of command must flow directly to the political leadership. To the political leadership. Now here we have to take a call. See, now here are issues of deep nuance, higher defense organization, which don't get discussed. For example, it is often quoted that the American CDS, the chain of command in the USA, runs from the politician to the theater commander. Why? It is not that the CDS is kept out. The CDS, being a military man, does not make the plans because he says, if I make the plans, I will own them and I will defend them. And if I demand them, the politician will not get non-partisan advice. See the sophistication. So here we have to take a call. The chain of command, once kinetics seem to begin, should have flowed directly from the political leadership to the theater commander, and that is why the necessity of theater commands, or from the CDS to the theater commands. And I'll tell you why the bureaucracies here must go. The China Study Group does some very good jobs in the peacetime. Yeah. But in war, foreign secretaries and the others who are on that committee have no understanding of the instrument of force. And then it leads to bureaucratic layers. And so, if you ask me, the role of CSG must now be terminated. In fact, if you go back to 62 in Henderson Brooks, one major reason why we didn't do well because you had Director IB citing posts, bureaucratic overreach.
Yeah.
So I'm of the view that the CSG is a good peacetime confabulation, but in war, the military chain of command must flow directly from the political bosses. And you see Sindoor, I think perhaps learning from Galwan, this time you had the three chiefs in the CDS sitting with the Prime Minister, everything discussed, no space for ambiguity, and things happened.
So then there is merit that there was ambiguity, whether to open fire or not to open fire.
And may I make one more point? See, here, and this is an Indian failing. Just yesterday, I heard Mr. Shashi Tharoor in a brilliant critique of the budget. You must listen to it. A brilliant critique about tax receipts, revenue, inability to gather capital. And I heard the finance minister listening in rapt attention. Yeah. This should be the dialogue between the political class and the opposition. Why does it not happen in national security? These issues, today, should we be content with territorial defense? Should we turn to homeland security? What about hemispheric influence? Economics में हम इतनी गहराई से बात करते हैं, national security में क्यों नहीं करते? The Parliamentary Committee on Defense, have you heard it giving any recommendations of consequence? So these debates, unless they happen, in this whole I'm not saying that reforms are not happening. And some of the reforms of recent times are mind-boggling. Yeah. Adani into Heptas, HAL out of AMCA. I just heard the Defense Secretary talking of throwing L1 out of the window. This is great news. Yeah. But now into these debates, if you have informed political opinions stepping in, and debates like this getting deeper, this is exactly what India needs in its journey through Amrit Kal. So my critique is this, that the deeper issues of national security must get discussed.
Must be debated and must be debated threadbare. But should they be debated when, Jal Pandey, the operations are still ongoing, in case they are, in terms of, yes, disengagement has happened, but de-escalation hasn't happened, de-induction hasn't happened. And is there merit in the criticism that there was strategic ambiguity on whether, when 4 tanks are advancing, should they open fire, should they not open fire? Or is that a decision that's best left to either the commanding officer on ground, the brigade commander, the div commander, the corps commander? At what level does that decision come?
Yeah, when the matter is sensitive, then the information must flow both upwards and downwards, right? But the final authority to actually open fire rests with the person who's on the ground. And please give credit to the soldiers, the tank men, the troop leaders, the company commanders, squadron leaders, who were their squadron commanders, who actually saw, they knew what was going to happen, and they held on to fire, right? You imagine a little trigger, a confusion, and when people are talking about confusion in orders and these things are being debated, I don't think there was any ambiguity in terms of orders at the tactical level, that what the soldier in the front or the company commanders and young officers are likely to do. They held on to the fire. In case there was a requirement, I'm quite sure when they would have understood there is a challenge, there's a possibly of a breach which is going to happen where they are deployed and the tanks are likely to move across towards the place where they're not supposed to. I'm very sure they would have opened fire because, look, we have all grown up in this organization.
Yes.
We today may be at the senior level, we may be veteran, but we exactly know when we were on the front line what our orders were. These rules of engagements are practiced thousands of times. And there is no clear one single line of order which can come out.
General Shukla? Okay,
yeah. So what I think is that we must allow the tactical commander to also continue to do what he's doing rather than getting too worried about this political debate which is happening at the top for reasons unknown to us.
Because,
right?
Of course, Sandeep, I'll just come to that aspect in just a moment, that is this advantage adversary, these debates. But the fact that, what is written seems to indicate that the then army chief reached out to CDS, to Raksha Mantri, to External Affairs Minister, and repeatedly, and the tanks were still advancing, and yet he was making those phone calls, not getting a feedback, again reaching out because the army commander was reaching out to him. Would this indicate that as the tanks were rising, we didn't know what needs to be done, or there was strategic ambiguity in the higher direction of war?
See, and here, I would like to just point out, look at the difference between the line of control and the LAC. along the line of control, I mean, I've opened fire as a lieutenant colonel, tank fire under Tej Pathak in 10 Division. The deterrence along the LC flows from battalion to battalion, brigade to brigade. It is not micromanaged from Delhi. Has the time come along the LAC to similarly devolve deterrence and these decisions around it downwards? That is one point. I think yes. I think yes, because we are far stronger. And ultimately, deterrence will come from those battalions on ground. I mean, DP will tell you, moment a battalion comes across, you study it, kaun hai battalion commander, inki kya wo hai, and you make your decisions on this. The point here is that because they have been micromanaged so long from Delhi, China study group and all, what happens, see, after Galwan, there should have been 10 contingencies drawn up on when we will open fire or we will not open up fire.
No, are we saying that those contingencies were not drawn up?
I don't know now.
I mean, there is a chain of command,
So
there is wargaming.
Exactly. If those contingencies were drawn up, and I presume they were, then why should we have come to this on the last day? Now, this is how, and this will happen as long as you have China study group. You don't have Pakistan study group. Because those bureaucratic layers will say, kal, parson. So I think the time now has come that deterrence must flow from the field formations to the adversary. And we must see, I'm not saying China study group is entirely, shall I say, it should entirely go out of business. It has a role in the build-up to hostilities. But once hostilities start, or near hostilities, it's my view that deterrence flows better from formations on ground.
Because Sandeep, the opposition very clearly says that that the government was trying to spin this narrative of a very bold leadership. But on ground, perhaps one end of South Block, that time South Block, did not know what's happening or what needed to be done. There was lack of clarity from the other end of South Block.
Kailash is bold. When before has Kailash been done?
Gaurav, so then if it is, then why this talk of the chief not knowing what to do?
So there is
once
talk,
QPQ has already been done.
There is talk. So we are saying we did well, but can we not refine further?
Yes.
We should continuously
So Gaurav,
refine.
there's also a tale of two systems, the Chinese system and the Indian system. Ours is a democracy. You see the kind of debates you will never see in parliament. General Zhao Ziyang, the Western Theatre commander, who was the Western Theatre commander in 2020, I'm sure we don't know what went through his mind and whether he made any calls to anyone. It's a completely closed system. It's an opaque system, the Chinese system. Since we even don't know what happened, what went through the minds of the PLA in 1962, why they did what they did, why they did what they did in 2020. On the other hand, you have the Indian system, which is very open, which is open to criticism. You have debates in parliament. And I think, Gaurav, the most important...
so open that you have ex-army chiefs who are writing books, when the situation is still perhaps not completely sorted
that can
out.
be debated, Gaurav. But, I think the biggest takeaway for me from this whole episode is that we need politico-military wargaming. It is very important to get the politicians to sit in war games with the military because you need to have political aims aligned with military objectives.
Unless, I would find this really, strange that it's not already happening. You've done a QPQ operation and the army doesn't have clarity whether it can open fire or not.
No, I'm saying that those war games, the situations would have been war gamed. And, prior to this incident, and these questions, I think, were in the remit of the army chief. They should not have gone beyond. The second point that he's making of Zhao Ziyang, very interesting, Zhao Ziyang, one letter that he's written, purportedly there he says that the PLA didn't want to do Galwan. It was Z who was more enthusiastic. Now, these things will happen everywhere. There is another very famous Air Force general in China, I forget his name, who told Z not to do Taiwan. They've said they were not ready, and he used a famous phrase that your 3 days of glory in Taiwan will put the Chinese back by 30 years. So I'm saying politico-military confabulations will happen, do happen, they will continue to happen. Okay. And in this case also, they have happened, but there are pointers to suggest that they need constant refinement.
So, Gaurav, I'll just put across my 2 bit. Please understand that Galwan happened as an incident which went out of control, right? But thereafter, when the actions have taken place, they are very well calibrated actions have gone on to at different levels of application of element power in terms of your economic engagement, your diplomatic parlays, in terms of your military maneuver in which Kailash ranges were occupied. After all, these were without actually going to a conflict or war which will set the country back. you are able to actually prove a point to the Chinese that you need to blink, right? So let's take this as one step. So therefore, I think there was a quite amount of strategic clarity. Now, when we are debating an incident of an hour worth of a communication happening and seeking of maybe an information or informing truly that things may go sideways. So kindly get ready, be prepared, right? That's a, so what is happening is that please understand, in case just 4 tanks are rising up on a ridge towards this thing, is it actually perturbing the tactical commander? I don't think so. But is it perturbing at the strategic level that something goes wrong in the sense that the fire opens up? Then if you are not fully prepared and cognizant of what is going to happen, tomorrow somebody can always dial up and say that if we were aware, then we would have called up Z and said, please stand down, right? There are a number of things of which we can debate, we can sit here and debate in hindsight. But I think there was enough clarity in the mind of people below, and at the top level, there's an exchange of information which is taking place to shape the larger environment, if possible, to control it, if it is likely to go out.
What are my orders? I don't know what am I to do.
I don't think so. No, please.
Am I not to open fire? Repeatedly asking Gaurav, what are my orders?
You are trying to put words into the mouth of a person who's not here to defend. Right?
Okay.
The statement which I have heard or read is this much, that he's informed and sought for any other orders which are possible. Right now we can only extrapolate what he's trying to say.
When all of you, permit me to ask you this question, sir. You talk about the OODA loop, you talk about wargaming, you talk about escalation ladder. So when you are looking at the escalation ladder, when I do the QPQ operation, so I go and occupy the Kailash range, right? What will he do?
Gaurav,
will he just will he send his tanks? We would not have war.
So what? He is not going to send 4 tanks to in case he's carry out some kind of a major operation. You think he's just going to send 4 tanks? These are all symbolism, right? But in that symbolism, if something goes awry, something goes sideways, somebody just, let's say that one tank commander gets jittery, which he will not. I'm quite sure in our case, our tank commanders, our soldiers are pretty formed up. Let's say something had gone wrong. Then everybody would have said that we scale it into a war. But if we had known what to do, what was happening, we would have been well prepared. Everything was ready. You please understand that when I think army commander will be talking to him, he will not say, "Aapka aadesh aayega to main gun tayar karunga." Everything is set, right? Please, it doesn't happen when, especially in such a scenario. Today, anything which is going to happen in LC or LAC or anywhere in the borders, the chain of communication happens so fast in terms of movement, getting ready, and to be set to be applied. All these options which have been practiced in terms of escalation ladder are already set. It doesn't require. After all, when Pahalgam happened and suddenly we had to go for Operation Sindoor, it did not realize that all the 3 chiefs and CDS were sitting now making plans. These plans we have been part of. These majority of plans have already been practiced, rehearsed, that when the political direction will come to apply a pressure of a different level, yes, you may not have the exact plan, but thereafter you modify some plans and thereafter you move out to carry out for the application. That is why possibly it took about those 13, 14 days to carry out the strike which required. Okay. It required intelligence to be...
So Sindoor is Pakistan. Yeah. And Pakistan we know how to deal with over decades. This is China that has just done a Galwan and every agreement that you've had with China, 1993, 6, 2014, border defense agreement, all of that has gone out of the window. And everything's happening virtually on the fly after that. You've taken a decision, fine, he's sitting on these places, so many rounds of talks have happened, he's not moving back, so a QPQ is done, and after QPQ, there's a change in his stance also. But then he's sending up 4 tanks. I'm sure it would have been war game. If he's doing something and he opens fire, what will we do?
So that's what I'm saying. You're looking at the tactical action for which all readiness is there. But you're also looking at what General Shukla said, that if it goes into a different realm, you're looking at 2 mighty powers to engage.
2 nuclear powers?
2 nuclear powers. So in case it goes to that different realm, you should be aware and informed.
So, General Pandey, does this indicate a certain hollowness in the higher direction of war. Memoirs must be written, and in a democracy, all facts must come out and must be debated in parliament. But does this, in your perception, also indicate a certain hollowness and preparedness and that higher direction of war?
Look, firstly, let me go back a little. I have been a commanding officer at LSC, right? Frankly, in no face-off, I had to look back or inform or tell. When the face-off took place, or when the face-off was about to take place, or when we saw the Chinese patrol coming where they were not supposed to come, the actions were not even informed to me as a commanding officer. They were taken at the level of company commanders. There were times when it went a little beyond in terms of engagement, and thereafter you rolled back and you informed upwards. Nobody asked you that why did you not do this or that, right? But those situations are in a normal peacetime environment. Now here you are looking at a very heightened degree of lack of trust between two countries on the borders, and a very high degree of inflamed passion on both sides of what is going to happen. You are there at Kailash Ranges, and something of this nature is happening. I am quite sure that the senior officers will be concerned, will it spiral out of control, right? So at the tactical level, again, I'm time and again saying that we, at the level of operational and tactical level, we are very, very sure. But at strategic level, at the high direction level, they should be sure that they should be aware it may go out of control.
Okay.
And that is time. In case when there's an ambiguity, I'm very sure the answer could not have come, jo uchit samjhe, wo kare, right? The answer would have been, थोड़ा सा रुकिए, अभी हम थोड़ा बातचीत करके बताते हैं. थोड़ा रुकिए, let me just dial up Z and see what we can do. थोड़ा रुकिए, let the tanks roll past, don't worry, we'll see tomorrow. I think the orders are very clear. What else? The day if the political hierarchy is going to call us up or call somebody up and say you do fire 2 rounds and stop, or fire an artillery and stop, I think that day we are doomed. We are not, there is enough scope of operations left at our level, which we carry out.
General?
Right?
So, I was just thinking, look at the first Italian change, Taiwan. Now, there are Chinese drills being carried out. I'm sure Paparo has his forces. In a situation where, say, for some reason, fire has to break out, will Paparo not take clearance from Trump? He will. So, because it is initiation of conflict, in that sense, if General Naravane sought clearance and the political leadership said कि आप जो करें, जो उचित समझें करें, it is civil-military relationship of the highest order. Yeah. Having said that, I'm still saying, having known at this end MO Directorate and all, these bureaucratic layers must be minimized.
Sure. Sandy?
Gaurav, just taking what General Shukla said forward, he mentioned Operation Parakram when Vajpayee ji said that thing about aap chaliye hum batayenge. The military leadership took that one line and they came up with options, alternatives. What was the army to do? The army said we will go across the LC, we will go across the international border. The Air Force actually said we will bomb Bahawalpur. Yeah. They came up with that contingency. The Navy said we will blockade Karachi. Now, it is the political leadership of the day that took the call not to do either of them. None of these options were initiated because of the nuclear overhang. But today, 25 years later, you have a political leadership which is far more mature, I would say, and it's not as risk-averse as the previous political leadership. And therefore, they authorized Op Sindoor, and you saw the kind of devastating response on Pakistan's airfields.
So the last 30 seconds I have on this part of the show, let me just get one response from you. Does anything indicate, and let's start from one end, does anything indicate weakness or hollowness, General Pandey?
I don't think so. There is any weakness or hollowness.
Nothing indicates weakness or abdication of responsibility? The
best answer at any level, from a company commander to a senior officer level, I will look for an answer is jo chis samjhiye aap kariye.
General Shukla?
See, hollowness and weakness, certainly not.
Abdication?
Certainly. In fact, I think this government has demonstrated, as Sandeep was saying, new normals in our strategic outlook. And it is the LC raids under General Hooda, then taking them on to Balakot, and look what happened in Pakistan. So that description is certainly too severe, and I don't agree with it at all.
Absolutely no ambiguity, Gaurav. There was a resolve, and I think this incident, this episode actually illustrates the fact that the military leadership only wanted to inform the political leadership that they were going to do something that could alter the status quo on the LAC with China. So they were informing them that these were the options and they could possibly look at an escalation.
If you have time?
Yes,
Just
always have time for you.
10 seconds. I mean, my mind just straight to 71. See, political directions will never be so prescriptive. Did Indira Gandhi say Dhaka? I don't think Manekshaw said Dhaka.
No, in fact,
they
were
evolved with
not in
Jacob,
favor
Sagar.
of Dhaka initially. I interviewed General Jacob incidentally as a young reporter for the Indian Express, and General Jacob was very clear. They wanted
Military options will evolve along the way, and I think what DP is saying is also right. Information will go; it will be a constant back and forth. They will not be so prescriptive.
Politics on the subject, we're a democracy and a noisy democracy. That's par for course, or is this advantage adversary?
Politics is welcome, provided it is more constructive. I was making that point. You watch Shashi Tharoor's critique of the budget. The opposition should have a similar critique of the national security perspective. We are, after all, a democracy. We mature with debates.
Name calling, you say, is avoidable?
I'm saying, I know the constructive portions of the debates. You know, the China study group.
I will just talk about the book and the approvals to be taken and all. You know, I think in today's environment, look at the loss of our India. That there are very few books from the Indian military, senior officers or young officers, which are available in this thing. You look at the Chinese also; they are writing books after books, right? Till the time we don't start writing our experiences, you will never be able to share what is happening in this very, very strictest this thing. And second is, how can you control in today's social media driven world? In what we are discussing today, if this requires to be ratified by the government of India in terms of censoring it or checking it, this debates will never ever take place.
Absolutely.
And when social media spaces become so flat in this world,
This is very, very important.
there is a sense of responsibility about every citizen of our country, including veterans and officers, that you should never delve into the things which are privileged information, which will cause national security harm. And we are well aware, cognizant over a service of this thing, that we understand what it will be.
Fair enough, right? General Shukla.
So see, while principally I agree with the DP, there are issues. I can tell you many reasons why the Henderson Brooks cannot be disclosed today. See, when you draw a comparison with USA, USA fights distant wars. So Vietnam is said and done. We fight the same adversaries over and over again. You cannot give carte blanche like this. So I'm saying an appointment as senior as Chief of the Army Staff, he's certainly entitled to write his memoirs. The memoirs must be read, but privileged communications have to be vetted by the government.
Yeah, that's why I'm not saying that you write everything, but what is there, the privileged information, classified information, which will have ramifications, should not be put out. There are so many people who are writing books. Suddenly, why should General Naravane's book become a hot potato?
Fair enough. I will let that be the last word on this part of the show. We've had a very open debate, getting all sides of the story, and perhaps we'll hear much more on this and so many other issues in times to come. I want to thank General Shukla, General Pandey and Sandeep for joining me here on this India Today special broadcast. A democracy, a noisy democracy, a vibrant democracy. Everything will be discussed and discussed threadbare. Perhaps at times even issues that impact security.